Sarah Williams could barely feel her feet as she walked toward the bus stop. Her white sneakers squeaked against the wet pavement from the afternoon rain. She had been working for 12 long hours at City General Hospital, and every muscle in her body ached. The name tag on her blue scrubs read Sarah Williams, RN, but right now, she felt more like a tired mom than a nurse. She pulled her phone from her pocket and saw 3 missed calls from her husband, Marcus. She smiled a little. He always worried when she worked the night shift. She texted him back quickly. Heading home now. Love you. The bus stop was crowded with people trying to get home after work. Sarah looked at the digital sign that showed her bus would arrive in 5 minutes. She shifted her heavy medical bag from one shoulder to the other. Inside the bag were her stethoscope, blood pressure cuff, and all the other tools she needed to take care of patients every day. A light rain started falling again. Sarah pulled up the hood of her jacket and watched the street lights come on one by one. The city looked different at night, quieter in some ways, but also more unpredictable. When the number 42 bus finally arrived, it was already packed with people. Sarah climbed the 3 steps slowly, scanning her bus card at the machine. The driver, an older man with gray hair, nodded at her. Long day at the hospital, he asked, noticing her scrubs. Very long, Sarah replied with a tired smile. But that's okay. Someone has to take care of people. She looked down the aisle of the bus, searching for an empty seat. Most seats had people in them already. Some passengers were reading books. Others stared at their phones. A few were sleeping against the windows, tired from their own long days. About halfway down the bus, Sarah spotted an empty seat. Next to it sat a big man wearing a black leather jacket. He had on heavy boots and looked like he rode a motorcycle. His helmet sat on the seat next to him, taking up the space where someone could sit. Sarah walked down the aisle carefully. The bus swayed as it turned a corner, and she had to grab the metal pole to keep from falling. Her feet hurt more with each step. All she wanted was to sit down for the 20-minute ride home. When she reached the empty seat, she stopped and looked at the man politely. "Excuse me," she said in a quiet voice. "Is this seat taken? I don't see anyone sitting here." The man looked up at her slowly. His eyes were red, and she could smell alcohol on his breath. He looked her up and down, staring at her hospital scrubs with a mean expression on his face. "Yeah, it's taken," he said loudly. "My friend is coming back. Find somewhere else to sit." Sarah looked around but didn't see anyone who looked like they belonged to this seat. The man's helmet was the only thing there. She was so tired, and her feet hurt so much. She really needed to sit down. "I can't see anyone," Sarah said, still being polite. "Could I please just sit down? I've been working all day and—" "I said it's taken," the man interrupted, his voice getting louder. Several other passengers looked over at them. "What part of that don't you understand?" Sarah felt her face get warm. She wasn't trying to cause trouble. She just wanted to sit down after 12 hours of taking care of sick people. But she could see that this man was not going to be reasonable. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll find another seat." As she started to walk away, the man laughed in a mean way. "Some people think they're so special just because they wear those uniforms," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Sarah kept walking, looking for another place to sit, but every seat was full. She would have to stand for the whole ride home. Her feet already hurt so much. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of the worst bus ride of her life. Sarah found a place to stand near the middle of the bus. She held onto a metal pole and tried to balance as the bus moved through the city streets. Her medical bag felt heavier with each passing minute. She looked at her watch. Only 15 more minutes until her stop. The man in the leather jacket, whose name was Jake, was getting louder. He had been drinking beer with his friends at Murphy's bar before getting on the bus. He had lost $50 playing pool, and his girlfriend had broken up with him earlier that week. He was angry at the world, and seeing Sarah in her nurse uniform made him even madder. "Look at her standing there," Jake said loudly to no one in particular. Thinks she's better than everyone else because she works at a hospital. Other passengers started looking uncomfortable. An elderly woman clutched her purse tighter. A teenage boy put his headphones on and turned up his music. A businessman in a suit moved closer to the front of the bus. But Jake wasn't done. He stood up from his seat, leaving his helmet behind. He was tall and wide, and when he stood up, he blocked the aisle. Several people had to move out of his way. "You know what I hate," Jake said, getting closer to Sarah. "I hate people who think they're heroes just because they wear a uniform." Sarah tried to ignore him. She had dealt with difficult people before at the hospital. Sometimes patients got angry or scared, and they said mean things. She had learned to stay calm and not take it personally. But Jake wasn't a patient. He was a stranger on a bus who seemed to be getting angrier by the minute. "I'm talking to you, nurse lady," Jake said, now standing right behind Sarah. "You think you're some kind of saint." Sarah turned around slowly. She was much shorter than Jake, and she had to look up to see his face. "Sir, I'm just trying to get home from work. I don't want any trouble." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. It was mean and cruel. "Trouble? You think I'm trouble? I'm just being friendly." He bumped into Sarah with his shoulder. It wasn't an accident. Sarah stumbled a little but caught herself on the pole. "Please leave me alone," Sarah said firmly, but quietly. She didn't want to make him angrier, but she also wasn't going to let him push her around. "Or what?" Jake asked, stepping even closer. Sarah could smell the beer on his breath and see the anger in his eyes. "What are you going to do about it, nurse lady?" The bus driver was busy watching the road and hadn't noticed what was happening in the back. The other passengers were watching, but no one said anything. Everyone seemed scared of Jake. Sarah pulled out her phone and quickly typed a text message to her husband. "On bus. Man bothering me. Route 42. Will call when I get off." Before she could send the message, Jake saw what she was doing. "Oh, calling for help?" he asked in a mocking voice. "Can't handle your own problems." He reached out and grabbed Sarah's phone from her hands. She tried to hold on to it, but Jake was too strong. "Give that back," Sarah said, her voice getting stronger. "That's my phone. You have no right to take it." Jake held the phone up high above his head, where Sarah couldn't reach it. He was grinning like this was all a big joke to him. "Let's see who you were texting," Jake said, looking at her phone screen. He started reading her messages out loud in a silly voice. "Oh, texting your husband. Telling him about the big scary man on the bus." Other passengers were starting to get angry now. A woman with gray hair stood up and said, "Young man, you need to give her back her phone right now." Jake turned to look at the woman. "Mind your own business, Grandma. This is between me and nurse lady here." Sarah felt embarrassed and scared. All she had wanted was to get home after a long day of helping people. Now this stranger was humiliating her in front of everyone on the bus. But she knew she couldn't let him get away with this. She stood up straighter and looked Jake in the eye. "Give me back my phone now." But Jake had other plans, and what he was about to do would change everything. Jake kept Sarah's phone high above his head, reading her messages and laughing. Sarah tried to jump up to reach it, but she was too short. Jake thought this was funny and started moving the phone from side to side like he was playing keep away with a child. "Please just give it back," Sarah said, trying to stay calm. "I need my phone." "You need your phone," Jake said in a baby voice, making fun of her. "What for?" "To call Mommy." An older man in the front of the bus called out, "Hey, enough. Give the lady her phone back." Jake turned around and glared at the man. "Who asked you, old man? Stay out of this." The tension on the bus was getting thicker. People were whispering to each other and looking worried. Some passengers were taking out their own phones, but they seemed too scared to actually call for help. Sarah tried a different approach. She spoke in the same calm voice she used with upset patients at the hospital. "Look, I can see you're angry about something, but I haven't done anything to you. I just want to go home to my family." "Your family?" Jake laughed meanly. Let me guess. Husband's probably some suit-wearing fancy guy who thinks he's better than working people like me. As Jake scrolled through her phone, he saw more messages. One was from her daughter asking when she'd be home for dinner. Another was from her son reminding her about his soccer game tomorrow. "Aw, kid's missing mommy," Jake said loudly so everyone could hear. Maybe mommy should have thought about that before acting all high and mighty. Sarah's patience was running out. She had been working all day to help sick people. She was tired, her feet hurt, and she just wanted to get home. Now this drunk bully was going through her private messages and making fun of her family. "That's enough," Sarah said, her voice getting firmer. "You're drunk, and you're acting like a fool. Give me my phone back right now." Jake's face changed. The mean smile disappeared, and his eyes got angry and cold. "What did you just call me?" "I called you a drunk fool," Sarah said, standing up straighter. "Because that's what you are." The bus got very quiet. Even the elderly woman who had spoken up before held her breath. Everyone knew Sarah had just crossed a line. Jake stepped closer to Sarah. He was so big that he blocked out the light from the bus windows. "Nobody calls me a fool," he said in a low, dangerous voice. "Especially not some stuck-up nurse who thinks she's better than me." "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Sarah said, but her voice was shaking now. "I just want my phone back so I can go home." Jake smiled again, but this time it was a scary smile. "You want your phone back? Here, catch." He threw the phone hard toward the back of the bus. Sarah watched her phone fly through the air and crash into the window. The screen cracked, and the phone fell to the floor. "Oops," Jake said, pretending to be sorry. "Butterfingers." Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't give this bully the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She started walking toward the back of the bus to get her broken phone. But Jake grabbed her arm and spun her around. His grip was tight and painful. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked. "We're not done talking." "Let go of me," Sarah said, trying to pull her arm free. "Don't touch me." "Or what?" Jake asked, gripping her arm tighter. "You'll call your husband." "Oh wait, you can't. Your phone is broken." The bus driver finally looked in his rearview mirror and saw what was happening. "Hey," he shouted, "what's going on back there?" Jake looked toward the front of the bus, then back at Sarah. For a moment, Sarah thought maybe he would let her go. Maybe this nightmare would end. But instead, Jake's grip got tighter, and the look in his eyes told Sarah that things were about to get much worse. Jake's grip on Sarah's arm was so tight that she could feel her fingers going numb. She tried to pull away, but he was too strong. The bus driver kept looking back in his mirror, trying to watch the road and see what was happening at the same time. "I said let go of me," Sarah said louder this time. Other passengers were starting to stand up, looking ready to help but still scared of Jake's size and anger. "You need to learn some respect," Jake said, pulling Sarah closer to him. She could smell the beer on his breath mixed with cigarettes. "Nobody talks to me like that. Nobody." A young mother holding a baby stood up from her seat. "Leave her alone. Can't you see she's just trying to get home?" Jake turned his head to look at the woman. "Sit down and mind your own business, or I'll make trouble for you too." The woman sat down quickly, holding her baby closer to her chest. But more people were getting angry now. The elderly man who had spoken up before stood up on shaky legs. "Son, this has gone far enough," the old man said in a strong voice. "Let the nurse go. She hasn't done anything to you." "Everyone needs to shut up," Jake yelled, his voice echoing through the bus. "This is between me and Miss Perfect here." The bus driver pulled over to the side of the road and put on the emergency brake. He grabbed the radio that connected him to the bus company. "This is Bus 42, he said into the radio. "I have a situation back here. I need police assistance." Jake heard the bus driver talking on the radio. This made him panic. He knew if the police came, he would be in big trouble. He already had 2 arrests for fighting, and his parole officer had warned him that one more incident would send him back to jail. "You called the cops on me," Jake shouted at the bus driver. "Why did you do that?" "I wasn't doing anything." "You're hurting that woman and scaring everyone else," the bus driver called back. "The police are on their way." Jake's face turned red with anger. He looked around the bus and saw everyone staring at him. Some people had their phones out, recording what was happening. This made Jake even madder. "Put those phones away," he screamed. "Stop recording me." But people kept their phones up. They wanted evidence of what Jake was doing in case they needed to show the police later. Sarah saw her chance. While Jake was yelling at the other passengers, she tried to break free from his grip. She twisted her arm and pulled as hard as she could. "Oh, no, you don't," Jake said, grabbing her with both hands now. "You're not going anywhere until I'm done with you." He pushed Sarah backward. She stumbled and had to grab onto a seat to keep from falling. Her medical bag fell off her shoulder and hit the floor. Bandages, medicine bottles, and her stethoscope scattered everywhere. "Look what you did," Sarah said, looking at her supplies all over the dirty bus floor. "Those are medical supplies that help save people's lives." "I don't care," Jake said. "Maybe this will teach you not to mouth off to people." He pushed Sarah again, harder this time. She fell backward, bumping into several passengers who tried to catch her. But Jake wasn't done. He was so angry and drunk that he couldn't think straight anymore. The bus door was supposed to close automatically when the bus stopped, but something was wrong with it. It had stayed open just a little bit, maybe an inch or 2. Not enough for anyone to notice, but enough to be dangerous. Jake grabbed Sarah by the shoulders and shoved her with all his strength. "Get out of my face," he screamed. Sarah stumbled backward, trying desperately to catch her balance. But this time, there was nothing behind her to stop her fall. She was heading straight for the partially open door. And there was nothing she could do to stop what was about to happen next. Sarah felt herself falling backward. Time seemed to slow down. She reached out desperately, trying to grab onto anything that could stop her fall. Her fingers touched a metal pole, but she couldn't get a good grip. The partially open bus door gave way under the force of her body hitting it. The door swung open completely, and Sarah tumbled out onto the hard sidewalk below. She hit the concrete with a loud thud. Her right shoulder took most of the impact, sending sharp pain shooting down her arm. Her hand scraped against the rough pavement as she tried to break her fall. Her knee hit the ground hard, tearing a hole in her scrubs. For a moment, Sarah just lay there stunned. Her head was spinning, and she could taste blood in her mouth where she had bitten her tongue during the fall. Inside the bus, everything erupted into chaos. Passengers started screaming and shouting at Jake. The elderly man who had tried to help Sarah before was now shaking with anger. "Look what you did," he yelled at Jake. "You pushed her off the bus. You could have killed her." The young mother with the baby was crying. "Someone call 911. She's hurt." Several passengers were already on their phones, calling for help. The bus driver turned off the engine and rushed to the door to check on Sarah. Jake stood frozen for a moment, staring at the open door. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He had been angry and drunk, but he never meant for Sarah to fall off the bus. All he wanted was to scare her a little, to make her respect him. But now she was lying on the sidewalk, and he could see blood on her hands and knees. Other people were gathering around her, and someone was already calling the police. "This is bad," Jake thought to himself. "This is really bad." He looked around the bus at all the angry faces staring at him. Everyone had seen what he did. Many of them had recorded it on their phones. There was no way he could deny this or talk his way out of it. Jake's survival instincts kicked in. He grabbed his motorcycle helmet from the seat and pushed past the passengers toward the front of the bus. People tried to block his way, but he shoved them aside. "Stop him," someone yelled. "Don't let him get away." The bus driver was still outside checking on Sarah, so Jake had a clear path to the front door. He jumped down the bus steps and started running down the street as fast as he could. Behind him, he could hear people shouting and car horns honking, but Jake didn't look back. All he could think about was getting as far away as possible before the police arrived. Meanwhile, Sarah was slowly sitting up on the sidewalk. Her whole body hurt, but she didn't think anything was broken. The kind woman had given her some tissues to clean the blood from her scraped hands. "Don't move too much, honey," the woman said gently. "The ambulance is coming." "I'm okay," Sarah said, though her voice was shaky. "I think I'm okay." The bus driver knelt down beside her. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry this happened. I should have stopped him sooner. I called the police as soon as I could." Sarah nodded. She understood it wasn't the driver's fault. He was just trying to do his job safely. What none of them knew was that Sarah's husband, Detective Marcus Williams, had been worried when he didn't hear back from her. He had been tracking her phone's location, and when he saw that her phone had stopped moving in an unusual place, he decided to drive over and check on her. He was only 3 blocks away when the 911 calls started coming in, and when Detective Williams arrived at the scene and saw his wife sitting on the sidewalk with torn clothes and scraped hands, Jake's night was about to get much worse than he ever imagined. Jake ran down the street as fast as he could, his heavy boots hitting the pavement hard. His leather jacket flapped behind him as he tried to get away from the bus stop. He could hear sirens in the distance getting louder. He knew the police were coming, and he had to hide. He ducked into an alley between 2 buildings and leaned against a brick wall, breathing hard. His heart was pounding, and sweat was dripping down his face. He pulled out his phone and called his friend Tommy. "Tommy, I need help," Jake said when his friend answered. "I'm in trouble. Big trouble." "What did you do now, Jake?" Tommy asked, sounding tired. I had a fight with someone on the bus. She fell off. I didn't mean for it to happen, but now the cops are looking for me." "Jake, you idiot," Tommy yelled. "Your parole officer told you to stay out of trouble. If they catch you, you're going back to prison." Meanwhile, back at the bus stop, Detective Marcus Williams pulled up in his police car. He had been driving to check on Sarah when he heard the emergency calls on his radio. When the dispatcher mentioned a woman in medical scrubs being pushed off a bus, his blood ran cold. He parked quickly and ran toward the crowd of people gathered on the sidewalk. When he saw Sarah sitting there with torn clothes and bloody hands, his heart almost stopped. "Sarah," he called out, running to her side. Sarah looked up and saw her husband. Relief washed over her face. "Marcus, how did you?" "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay." Marcus knelt down beside his wife and gently touched her face. He could see the cuts on her hands and the bruise forming on her shoulder. His hands were shaking with worry and anger. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice tight with controlled fury. The bus driver came over to them. "Officer, I saw the whole thing. A big guy in a leather jacket. He was drunk and started bothering your wife. Then he pushed her right off the bus." "Which way did he go?" Marcus asked, standing up. Several passengers pointed down the street. "That way. He ran that way. He had a motorcycle helmet with him." Marcus got on his radio and called for backup. "This is Detective Williams. I need all available units in the area of 5th and Main. Suspect is a white male, large build, wearing black leather jacket, carrying a motorcycle helmet. He assaulted a hospital worker and fled on foot." 2 paramedics arrived and started checking Sarah's injuries. She insisted she was fine, but they wanted to take her to the hospital just to be sure. "Go with them," Marcus told Sarah gently. "I need to find this guy before he hurts someone else." "Be careful," Sarah said, squeezing his hand. "I love you. I love you too, and don't worry. We'll get him." As the ambulance drove away with Sarah, Marcus turned to the witnesses. He took out his notebook and started writing down what everyone had seen. The elderly man who had tried to help Sarah was still upset. "Officer, that man was like an animal. He had no reason to hurt her. She was just trying to get home from work. Did anyone get video of what happened? Marcus asked. 3 people showed him their phones. They had recorded everything, including Jake pushing Sarah and her falling off the bus. Marcus watched the videos, his jaw clenched tight. Now he had a clear picture of exactly what this bully had done to his wife. Back in the alley, Jake's friend Tommy had arrived to pick him up. "Get in the car," Tommy said. "We need to get you out of here." But as Jake ran toward Tommy's car, he didn't see the police car turning into the alley behind him. Detective Williams had found him. "Police, stop right there," Marcus shouted, getting out of his car. Jake turned around and saw the officer. He tried to run, but his legs felt like jelly. All the beer he had drunk was catching up with him, and he stumbled over his own feet. He fell hard on the concrete, just like Sarah had. But this time, there was no one to help him up. There was only Detective Williams walking toward him with handcuffs ready. Detective Marcus Williams stood over Jake, who was lying on the dirty alley ground. Jake's motorcycle helmet had rolled away, and there was a cut on his lip from where he fell. He looked up at Marcus with fear in his eyes. "Don't move," Marcus said firmly, pulling out his handcuffs. "You're under arrest." Jake tried to crawl away, but Marcus was faster. He grabbed Jake's arm and pulled it behind his back. "I didn't do anything," Jake yelled. "This is police brutality." "You pushed my wife off a bus," Marcus said, his voice cold and professional. Even though he was angry, he knew he had to do his job the right way. "You're under arrest for assault." "Your wife." Jake's face went pale. "That nurse was your wife." Marcus didn't answer. He finished putting the handcuffs on Jake and called for backup on his radio. 2 other police cars arrived within minutes. Officer Rodriguez got out of the first car. "Marcus, we got here as fast as we could. Is Sarah okay?" "She's hurt, but she'll be fine," Marcus replied. "This is the guy who did it." Jake started trying to make excuses. "Look, officer, this is all a big misunderstanding. I was just having a bad day. I lost my job. My girlfriend left me. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Save it for the judge," Officer Rodriguez said. Jake's friend Tommy, who had been hiding behind his car, finally spoke up. "Jake, shut up. Don't say anything without a lawyer." But Jake kept talking. He was scared and drunk, and the words just kept coming out. "I was just trying to teach her some respect. She called me a fool. I don't have to take that from anyone." Marcus wrote down everything Jake said in his notebook. Every word would be used as evidence in court. More police officers arrived at the scene. They searched Jake and found several things that made his situation much worse. In his wallet, they found his parole papers. Jake was supposed to stay sober and avoid any trouble with the law. Being drunk in public and assaulting someone meant he had broken his parole in multiple ways. "Oh, this is interesting," Officer Rodriguez said, reading the papers. "Mr. Jake Morrison, you're on parole for assault. And according to this, you're not supposed to drink alcohol." Jake's face turned even whiter. He knew he was in serious trouble now. The officers also found a small bag of illegal drugs in Jake's jacket pocket. Jake tried to claim they weren't his, but the officers had heard that excuse 1,000 times before. "These keep getting better," Marcus said grimly. "Assault, public intoxication, drug possession, and parole violation. You really went all out tonight, didn't you?" At the hospital, Sarah was being examined by doctors. They cleaned her cuts and bandages her scraped hands and knees. X-rays showed that nothing was broken, but she would be sore for days. Dr. Adams, who Sarah had worked with for years, shook his head sadly. "Sarah, I can't believe someone would do this to you. You've helped so many people in this hospital. Some people are just angry at the world," Sarah said quietly. "I feel sorry for him, actually." "You feel sorry for the guy who pushed you off a bus?" Dr. Adams asked, surprised. "He's clearly got problems. Drinking, anger, making bad choices. Maybe this will be a wake-up call for him. Back at the police station, Jake was fingerprinted and photographed. The desk sergeant read him his rights, but Jake barely listened. He was thinking about going back to prison and how his life had gotten so messed up. The videos from the bus passengers had already been sent to the police station. Detective Williams watched them again, frame by frame. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no way Jake could claim this was self-defense or an accident. But what Jake didn't know yet was that the situation was about to get even worse for him. When the police ran his fingerprints through the computer system, they discovered something that would add even more charges to his growing list of crimes. At the police station, the computer finished running Jake's fingerprints. The results made Detective Williams raise his eyebrows in surprise. Well, Marcus said to Officer Rodriguez, "Our friend Jake here has been busy. He has an outstanding warrant for a different assault case in the next county." The warrant was from 6 months ago. Jake had gotten into a fight at another bar and hurt someone badly. He had skipped his court date and disappeared, hoping the police would forget about him. "This guy just keeps getting better," Officer Rodriguez said. "So now we have assault on your wife, parole violation, drug possession, and an outstanding warrant." Jake was sitting in the holding cell, still wearing his torn leather jacket. His face was bruised from when he fell while trying to run away. He kept asking to make a phone call, but the officers told him he would have to wait. When Detective Williams told Jake about the warrant, Jake's shoulders slumped in defeat. "This can't be happening," he mumbled. "This can't be real." "Oh, it's very real," Marcus said. "You've had plenty of chances to change your life, and you've wasted every single one of them." The story of what happened on the bus was already spreading around the city. One of the passengers had posted the video on social media, and it was being shared thousands of times. The local news stations picked up the story and started reporting on it. Tonight at 11, the news anchor said on television, a hospital worker was pushed off a city bus by an angry passenger. The attack was caught on camera, and the suspect is now in custody. People watching the news were outraged. Many of them knew Sarah from the hospital where she worked. She had taken care of their family members when they were sick. Others were just angry that someone would attack a healthcare worker. At the hospital, Sarah's coworkers were shocked when they heard what happened. Nurse Janet, who worked the same shift as Sarah, started crying when she saw Sarah's torn scrubs and bandaged hands. "Why would someone do this to you?" Janet asked. "You're the kindest person I know." "I don't know," Sarah said softly. "He seems so angry about everything. Maybe he's been carrying that anger for a long time." The hospital staff decided to do something special for Sarah. They organized a support fund to help her with any medical bills and time off work she might need. Even though Sarah said she didn't need the money, they insisted. Dr. Patterson, the chief of staff, came to check on Sarah personally. "Sarah, you've been working here for 10 years, he said. "You've saved countless lives and helped thousands of families. This hospital stands behind you completely." "Thank you, Dr. Patterson," Sarah said with tears in her eyes. "That means a lot to me." Meanwhile, Jake's friend Tommy was trying to find a lawyer who would take Jake's case, but when lawyers heard about all the charges and the video evidence, most of them said there wasn't much they could do. "Your friend is looking at serious prison time," one lawyer told Tommy over the phone. "Assault, especially against a healthcare worker, is taken very seriously. Add in the parole violation and the outstanding warrant, and he's looking at least 3 to 5 years. Tommy hung up the phone and shook his head. He had been friends with Jake since high school, but he was getting tired of Jake's problems. This wasn't the first time Jake had called him for help after a fight. Back at the police station, Jake was finally allowed to make his one phone call. He called his mother, who lived in another state. "Mom," Jake said when she answered, his voice cracking. "I'm in jail again." His mother sighed deeply. "Oh, Jake, what did you do now?" "I hurt someone, Mom. I hurt someone bad. And this time, I don't think I can get out of it." His mother was quiet for a long moment. Jake, I've been trying to help you for years. I've paid for lawyers, paid for rehab, covered your rent when you couldn't work. But I can't keep doing this. Mom, please. No, Jake. You're 35 years old. You need to face the consequences of your actions. I love you, but I'm done enabling you. She hung up the phone, leaving Jake alone in his cell with nothing but his regrets. 6 months later, Jake stood in the courthouse wearing an orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed, and he looked much thinner than he had on that night on the bus. Prison had not been kind to him. The judge, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes, looked down at Jake from her bench. Mr. Morrison, you have been found guilty of assault and battery, violating your parole, drug possession, and failure to appear in court for a previous assault charge. Jake's lawyer, who had finally agreed to take his case, stood beside him. They had tried to make a deal with the prosecutor, but the evidence was too strong. The videos from the bus, the witnesses, and Jake's own words had made it impossible to defend. In the front row of the courtroom sat Sarah and her family. She had chosen to attend the sentencing, though many people told her she didn't have to. Detective Marcus held her hand tightly. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, standing up, "this was not just a random act of violence. Mr. Morrison targeted Mrs. Williams because she was different from him. He attacked a healthcare worker who dedicates her life to helping others. This was a hate crime, plain and simple." Jake's lawyer tried to speak for him. "Your Honor, my client has had problems with alcohol and anger management. He grew up in a difficult home and has struggled with addiction. He's deeply sorry for what he did." The judge nodded but didn't look convinced. "Mr. Morrison, do you have anything to say before I pass sentence?" Jake stood up slowly. For the first time since that night, he looked directly at Sarah. His voice was quiet and shaky. "Mrs. Williams, I don't know what to say. I was drunk and angry, but that's no excuse. I hurt an innocent person who was just trying to get home from work. I've had 6 months in jail to think about what I did, and I'm ashamed." He paused, wiping tears from his eyes. "I know saying sorry doesn't take back what I did, but I want you to know that I'm getting help now. I'm going to AA meetings in jail, and I'm taking anger management classes. I don't ever want to hurt anyone again." Sarah listened quietly. Even now, she felt more sadness than anger toward this broken man. The judge spoke again. "Mr. Morrison, I sentence you to 3 years in state prison. You will also be required to complete alcohol treatment and anger management programs. When you are released, you will have 5 years of probation." Jake nodded and was led away by the guards. As he passed Sarah, he whispered, "I'm sorry," one more time. After the sentencing, reporters gathered outside the courthouse. They wanted to interview Sarah, but she kept her statement short. "I'm glad this is over," she said. "I hope Mr. Morrison uses his time in prison to get the help he needs. Nobody wins when people carry so much anger and hate." A year later, Sarah was back to her normal life. She still worked at the hospital, taking care of patients with the same kindness she had always shown. Her scraped hands had healed completely, leaving only small scars that reminded her of that night. The hospital had used the incident to start a new program. They began offering free counseling and support groups for people struggling with anger and addiction. Sarah helped develop the program, wanting to prevent what happened to her from happening to others. "If we can help even one person deal with their anger in a healthy way," Sarah told the hospital board, "then maybe some good can come from what happened to me." Detective Marcus was proud of his wife's strength and forgiveness. Most people would want revenge, he told her one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "Revenge doesn't heal anything," Sarah replied, "but helping people change their lives. That's how we make the world better." Jake served his full sentence and was released after 3 years. He found a job at a construction company and continued going to AA meetings. Sometimes he thought about that night on the bus and the nurse whose life he had changed. He hoped that someday he might be able to make amends for what he had done. But Sarah had already moved on. choosing to focus on healing others rather than holding on to hate.